I came home early that day, expecting the quiet hum of our empty house. Instead, I heard her voice, Lauren's, drifting from the kitchen, light and bubbly in a way I hadn't heard in years. "I can't wait to see you," she giggled, the words slicing through me like a winged chun-chain punch. I froze, my training kicking in. Observe, don't react. I've spent a decade practicing this Chinese martial art, learning to read opponents, to stay calm under pressure. It's why I didn't storm in. Instead, I listened. She hung up, and I stepped into the kitchen, casual as ever. "Who was that?" I asked, keeping my tone neutral. Her smile faltered, but she recovered fast. "Oh, just Susan," she said, stirring her coffee. "She's not doing great, so I'm heading to our hometown again this weekend to check on her." Susan, her cousin, supposedly sick. It was the same story she'd fed me for months, but that laugh, that wasn't the sound of someone consoling a dying relative. I nodded, smiled, let her think I bought it. But my mind was already spinning, analyzing her movements, her tells. Wing Chun teaches you to see the unseen, to sense the attack before it lands. Lauren's trips had become a pattern, every third weekend, like clockwork. I trusted her, chalked it up to family loyalty. But now, that phone call planted a seed of doubt I couldn't ignore. I spent the night replaying every detail, every excuse. Was I paranoid, or was I finally seeing the truth? By morning, I made up my mind. Wing Chun isn't just about fighting. It's about strategy, about choosing when to strike. I wasn't going to confront her, not yet. I needed proof, not suspicions. That's why I decided to stop asking questions and start finding answers. And the perfect opportunity was coming up, our high school reunion, where old secrets have a way of slipping out, especially when people think you're not paying attention. The high school reunion was my chance to observe, to gather intel without tipping my hand. I convinced myself I was overreacting, that Lauren's phone call was innocent, but Wing Chun taught me to watch, to catch the subtle shifts in posture, the flicker of eyes that betray a lie. The gym was a blur of nostalgia, old friends, bad music, and too much cheap wine, but my focus was razor sharp. Lauren was across the room, laughing with old classmates, her ease almost convincing. Almost. I was halfway through a conversation with Greg, a guy I hadn't seen since graduation, when he dropped the bomb. "Man, it's crazy how fast time flies," he said, sipping his beer. "I can't believe it's already been a year since her cousin passed." My stomach lurched. "Her cousin," I echoed, keeping my voice steady. "Yeah, Susan," he said, oblivious to the grenade he'd just lobbed. "Cancer, right? Rough year for Lauren's family." "Susan, dead. A year ago." I nodded, smiled, pretended I knew, but inside, my mind was a battlefield. Lauren had told me, just last month, that she was visiting Susan, bringing her soup, holding her hand. If Susan was gone, then who the hell was my wife, seeing every third weekend? The room spun, but I forced myself to stay calm. Wing Chun is about control, about not letting emotion cloud your judgment. I glanced at Lauren, still chatting, her smile bright as ever. Was she lying to me, or was Greg mistaken? No, Greg had no reason to lie, but Lauren? She had every reason if she was hiding something. I needed to know, not guess. That night, as we drove home, I played the doting husband, asking about her plans, her next trip to see Susan. She didn't miss a beat, spinning the same story. But now I saw the cracks, the way her fingers tightened on the steering wheel, the way her laugh sounded forced. I didn't sleep that night, my mind already planning my next move. Follow her, see where she really goes, and uncover the truth she's buried. Following her was the only way to know for sure. So that Friday, I tailed her, my heart pounding, but my movements precise, like a Wing Chun form executed flawlessly. Following someone without being seen isn't easy, but my training helped. Stay calm, blend in, anticipate. I told Lauren I had a late work meeting, giving me the perfect excuse to slip out. She kissed me goodbye, her lips cold, and drove off in her silver sedan, oblivious to me, trailing 2 cars behind. I expected her to head to Susan's old house, some staged visit I could debunk. But she didn't. She drove past the exit to our hometown's residential area and kept going, straight to the edge of town, where the neon sign of the Starlight Motel flickered in the dusk. A motel. My stomach twisted, but I forced myself to think, not feel. Wing Chun is about clarity, about seeing the fight before it begins. I parked across the street, watching as she pulled a small duffel bag from her trunk and walked straight to room 312. I waited, expecting a man to show up, some sleazy lover, some obvious explanation for her lies. But no one came. An hour passed, then two, and she stayed inside alone. The lights in the room stayed on, the curtains drawn. What the hell was she doing in there? Was this a rendezvous that hadn't happened yet? Or something else entirely? My mind raced, but I stayed put, disciplined, patient. Wing Chun teaches you to wait for the right moment, not to rush and blindly. By midnight, she still hadn't left, and no one had joined her. I was about to call it quits, to confront her then and there, when I saw her silhouette move to the window, peering out as if she sensed something. I ducked lower in my seat, my pulse hammering. Had she seen me? No. She turned away, the light in the room flicking off. But now, I had more questions than answers, and I knew I couldn't confront her yet, not without understanding what she was really doing in that room alone. I didn't confront her that night because Wing Chun isn't about brute force. It's about precision, about striking only when you know your target. I needed more than suspicions, more than a motel room and a duffel bag. So, the next day, while Lauren was running errands, I went back to the Starlight Motel, my plan clear: gather intel, not start a fight. The neon sign buzzed overhead as I approached the front desk, my mind already calculating my next move. The desk clerk, a bored 20-something with a name tag reading Kyle, barely looked up from his phone as I approached. I slid a 50 across the counter, keeping my voice low. Room 312, I said. Anything you can tell me about the woman staying there? He hesitated, but the bill disappeared into his pocket. She's not chatty, he said, shrugging. Checks in, pays cash, leaves by morning. But he reached under the counter, pulling out a sealed envelope. This was left for her yesterday, addressed to L. Thompson. L. Thompson, Lauren's maiden name. My pulse quickened, but I kept my face neutral, taking the envelope. Thanks, I muttered, stepping outside before tearing it open. Inside was a single sheet of paper, the message typed in stark black ink. Next payment due Friday. Room 312. Don't be late. Payment? For what? My mind spun. Blackmail, drugs, something worse? This wasn't an affair. This was something darker, something calculated. I drove home, the note burning a hole in my pocket, my Wing Chun training keeping me from spiraling. Analyze, adapt, act. Lauren wasn't cheating. She was hiding something far worse, something that required cash and secrecy. But why use her maiden name? Was she trying to keep this separate from me, from our life? And who was demanding payments in a seedy motel? I hid the note in my desk, knowing I couldn't confront her yet, not without understanding the full scope of her deception. That's why I decided to dig deeper, to follow the money, to see where those payments were going and what secret she was so desperate to protect. Digging into our finances was the logical next step, because if Lauren was making payments, the money trail would reveal the truth. I've always been methodical, a skill sharpened by years of software engineering and Wing Chun. Both demand precision. Whether it's writing clean code or landing a perfect strike, you don't act without a plan. So, armed with a mysterious note, I logged into our joint savings account late at night, while Lauren slept, determined to trace every dollar. At first, nothing seemed off: bills, groceries, the usual. But then I noticed a pattern. Small withdrawals, always $500, made every third Friday, the day before her trips. I dug deeper, finding a second account linked to hers, one I didn't recognize. My stomach sank as I saw the transfers. Thousands of dollars funneled into this shadow account, then drained within days. The dates matched her motel stays perfectly. This wasn't pocket change. This was our future, our savings, vanishing into a black hole. I leaned back, my mind racing, but I forced myself to stay calm. Wing Chun teaches you to adapt, to turn chaos into opportunity. Whoever was demanding payments had leverage over her, something big enough to drain our accounts and keep her lying to my face. But what? And why hadn't she told me? Was she protecting me? Or herself? I printed the statements, hiding them with a note, knowing each piece of evidence was a step closer to the truth. But the deeper I dug, the darker it got. I thought I was dealing with a cheating wife, but now I was starting to wonder if I'd married a criminal. Was she the victim here, or the mastermind? I needed to know more, to see the whole board before making my move. That's why, the next time she packed her duffel bag and kissed me goodbye, I didn't just watch her go. I followed her again, determined to catch her in the act, to see who was on the other end of those payments, and to finally understand the secret she was willing to bankrupt us to keep. Following her again was the only way to catch the truth in action. So I staked out the Starlight Motel the next Friday, armed with a camera and a patience honed by years of Wing Chun. My training taught me to wait, to watch for the moment an opponent reveals their weakness. I parked across the street, hidden in the shadows, watching room 312's flickering light. Lauren was inside, her silhouette moving behind the curtains, but still, no one joined her, until he did. A man in a black hoodie emerged from the darkness, glancing around before slipping into the room. My pulse quickened, but I stayed calm, snapping photos, though the dim light blurred the details. This was it, the person on the other end of those payments, the key to her secret. I needed a closer look, so I crept across the street, sticking to the shadows, my Wing Chun stealth keeping me silent. But just as I reached the window, the door flew open and the man bolted, his hood pulled tight. I froze, expecting Lauren to follow, but she didn't. Instead, I saw something glinting on the ground, a burner phone dropped in his haste. I snatched it up, retreating to my car, my mind racing. Wing Chun teaches you to adapt, to turn an opponent's mistake into your advantage. I powered on the phone, expecting threats, secrets, a name, anything. But there was only one message, a photo of me, taken from across the street, time-stamped an hour ago. My blood ran cold. He'd seen me, watched me, while I thought I was the hunter. I glanced around, the darkness suddenly alive with unseen eyes. Was he still here? Was Lauren in on this? The phone buzzed, a new message popping up. Back off, or the next photo goes public. Public? Of what? I needed answers, not more questions. That's why I decided to track this man down, to find out who he was, who'd hired him, and what secret was worth threatening my life to protect. Tracking him down meant turning his own tools against him. So I used the burner phone's call log to trace the man in the hoodie. Wing Chun teaches you to redirect an opponent's energy, not just block it, and my software engineering skills made short work of the number. It led to a name, Victor Grayson, a private investigator with a reputation for playing dirty. This wasn't a lover or a blackmailer. This was a professional hired to do someone's bidding. But whose? I arranged to meet Victor at a diner on the edge of town, my Wing Chun discipline keeping my nerves in check. He slid into the booth across from me, his hoodie swapped for a leather jacket, his smirk sharp as a blade. "You're in over your head, pal," he said before I could speak. "Walk away, or you won't like what I dig up next." I leaned forward, my voice low. "Dig up what? And for who?" His smirk faltered, but he recovered fast. "Let's just say it's a family matter." "A family matter?" My mind spun, but I pressed harder, using Wing Chun's principle of controlled aggression. "Whose family?" I asked, my tone sharp. He sighed, glancing around, then leaned in. "Diane hire me," he said. "Lauren's mother. But that's all you get. Back off, or I'll make sure everyone sees what I've got on you." Diane? The woman who baked cookies and called me son? What was she hiding, and why was Lauren involved? I left the diner, my head buzzing with questions, but Victor's threat lingered. What did he have on me? Photos? Lies? And why was Diane, of all people, pulling the strings? Wing Chun teaches you to anticipate the next strike, to see the bigger fight. This wasn't just about Lauren anymore. It was about her entire family, a secret they'd buried deep. That's why I decided to confront Diane, to see if she'd crack under pressure, or if she'd reveal just how far this web of deception stretched. A family secret? My wife's family was as normal as apple pie, or so I thought. Confronting Diane directly would tip my hand, so I decided to strike smarter, not harder, using Wing Chun's principle of precision. I called Diane, Emily, and Mark, Lauren's mother, sister, and brother, claiming I needed their help with an emergency involving Lauren. My plan was simple: bring them to room 312, catch Lauren in the act, and let the truth unravel in front of her family. I wanted answers not just for me, but for them. I drove them to the Starlight Motel, my Wing Chun calm, keeping my emotions in check, though my heart pounded with every step. Diane was pale, Emily confused, Mark skeptical, but they followed me to the door. I knocked, hard, and Lauren opened it, her face draining of color as she saw us all. "Miles, what?" she started, but I pushed past her, her family trailing behind, expecting to find a lover, a betrayal, anything to explain her lies. But the room was empty, except for stacks of cash and documents spread across the bed. Lauren screamed, "Miles, you don't understand." But I grabbed a document, my eyes scanning the words: birth certificates, adoption records, a name I didn't recognize. Diane gasped, clutching Emily's arm, while Mark muttered, "You idiot, you've ruined everything." "Ruin what?" I turned to Lauren, my voice steady despite the chaos. "Explain. Now." She collapsed onto the bed, sobbing, but her words came fast, desperate. "It's Emily," she said. "She's not my sister. She's my daughter. I gave her up at 16, and Mom raised her as her own." Emily staggered back, Diane's grip tightening, and I felt the room tilt. Emily, her daughter? Not her sister? The payments, the secrecy. It was all to keep this buried, to protect a lie that had defined their family for decades. But why the cash, the motel? I looked at the papers again, my Wing Chun focus cutting through the noise, and saw another name, a blackmailer, threatening to expose it all. I thought I'd uncovered the truth, but then Mark, her brother, said, "That's not the whole story, Lauren. Tell him about Dad." Mark's words hung in the air, heavy as a Wing Chun strike. I turned to Lauren, my mind racing but my body still, disciplined. Wing Chun teaches you to stay grounded, to process chaos without losing control, and I needed that now more than ever. Lauren's sobs quieted, her eyes darting to Diane, who looked away, ashamed. "Tell him," Mark repeated, his voice sharp, and Lauren finally spoke, her voice trembling. "Dad's alive," she said, the words hitting me like a punch to the gut. "He didn't die in that car accident 20 years ago. He faked it to escape gambling debts. He's the one blackmailing us, demanding money to keep quiet about Emily." Alive? Her father, the man whose funeral I'd attended, whose photo sat on their mantel. I glanced at the documents, seeing his name now, Richard, scrawled on notes, threats, demands. Diane whispered, "We thought you'd never find out," but her words were drowned out by Emily's anguished cry. "You all lied to me?" I stepped back, my Wing Chun training keeping me from exploding, though my mind was a battlefield. Lauren wasn't just hiding a family secret. She was protecting a criminal, a man who'd abandoned them, only to return as a predator. But why hadn't she told me? Was she ashamed? Or was there more? Mark's glare at Lauren told me there was something deeper, darker, still buried. I grabbed a note from the pile, reading aloud. "Pay or Emily's birth certificate goes public." Public. That's what Victor meant, exposing not just me, but them, tearing their family apart. Lauren reached for me, pleading, "Miles, I was trying to protect everyone," but I pulled away, my trust in her shattered. Wing Chun teaches you to see the whole fight, not just the first strike, and I knew this wasn't over. Richard was out there, pulling the strings, and I wasn't about to let him win. I thought I'd uncovered the truth, but then Mark's words echoed in my mind, hinting at one final secret, one last lie that could change everything. That's why I decided to find Richard, to end this once and for all. Finding Richard meant going on the offensive, using Wing Chun's principle of turning the enemy's force against them. I knew Victor, the PI, was my best lead, so I tracked him down again, this time at a dive bar, my Wing Chun discipline keeping my anger in check. He saw me coming, his smirk gone, replaced by a wary squint. "You don't give up, do you?" he said, but I cut him off, slamming the burner phone on the table. "Where is he?" I asked, my voice low, controlled. Victor sighed, rubbing his temples, then leaned in. Richard's holed up in a cabin, 20 miles north, near Blackwood Lake. But listen, man, he's dangerous. He's not the man Lauren remembers. He's desperate, paranoid, armed. Armed. The word hit me, but I didn't flinch. Wing Chun teaches balance. Every action has a counteraction, and I was ready to counter whatever Richard threw at me. Victor slid me a crumpled map, marking the spot, then added, "Don't say I didn't warn you." I drove home, my mind replaying everything. Lauren's lies, Diane's complicity, Emily's pain, Mark's cryptic hints. Richard wasn't just a blackmailer. He was a ghost, a man who'd orchestrated his own death to escape, only to return as a parasite. But why now? And what was Mark hiding? Wing Chun teaches you to anticipate, to see the blind spots, and I knew I couldn't trust anyone, not even Lauren's family. They'd all lied, all protected him, for reasons I still didn't understand. That night, I packed a bag, camera, flashlight, a pocket knife, preparing for the confrontation, mentally rehearsing Wing Chun forms: precision, efficiency, control. I thought I was the hunter, but now I realized I was the prey, and the real predator was still out there, waiting. I glanced at Lauren's side of the bed, empty, her lies echoing in the silence. Tomorrow, I'd face Richard, not just for me, but for the truth, for the family he'd destroyed. And if Mark was right, if there was more to this story, I'd uncover that too, no matter how deep the deception went. Tracking Richard to his cabin was my next move, but I needed a plan, not just a destination. So I turned to Wing Chun's philosophy: turn the enemy's force against them. Richard thought he was untouchable, hiding in the woods, extorting his own family, but I'd make his isolation his weakness. I studied the crumpled map Victor gave me, memorizing the terrain, planning my approach like a Wing Chun form. Every step deliberate, every action precise. My software engineering skills helped too, as I cross-referenced satellite images to confirm the cabin's location, ensuring I'd have the upper hand. But Victor's warning echoed in my mind. He's dangerous, man. Dangerous meant unpredictable, and Wing Chun teaches you to anticipate chaos, to see opportunities where others see threats. Richard had weapons, paranoia, and years of deception on his side, but I had discipline, clarity, and a reason to fight. My life, my trust, my future, all shredded by his lies and Lauren's complicity. I packed my bag, camera, flashlight, pocket knife, knowing this wasn't just about catching him, but ending him legally, decisively. I considered telling the police, but Wing Chun teaches you to strike first, not wait for help. Richard's blackmail, his faked death, his threats, they were crimes, but I needed proof, not just accusations. That's why I decided to confront him alone, to record his confession, to expose him in a way he couldn't escape. But Mark's words, that's not the whole story. Not at me. Was there more to Richard's scheme, or to Lauren's role? I couldn't trust her, not after her lies, not after she chose her family's secrets over me. I left at dawn, the map tucked in my pocket, my mind sharp, my body ready. Wing Chun teaches you to see the fight before it begins, and I saw this one clearly. Richard cornered, desperate, dangerous. I thought I was done being the victim. I was going to end this my way, but I couldn't shake the feeling that the real fight was still ahead, hidden in the shadows of the truth. The woods around Blackwood Lake were eerily quiet as I approached the cabin, my Wing Chun training keeping my steps silent, my senses sharp. I'd rehearsed this moment mentally like a Wing Chun form. Precision, efficiency, control, knowing one wrong move could turn hunter into hunted. The cabin loomed ahead, a dilapidated shack surrounded by overgrown pines, its windows dark, but the faint glow of a lantern seeping through the cracks. I crouched low, camera ready, recording every detail, my plan clear: confront, record, expose. I knocked, hard, and the door creaked open, revealing Richard, Lauren's father, the ghost who'd haunted her family for 20 years. He was grizzled, paranoid, his eyes darting, a pistol tucked in his belt. "Ew," he snarled, recognizing me from photos, maybe from Victor's warnings. "You shouldn't have come." I stayed calm, Wing Chun's discipline steadying me, and said, I'm here to end this. Confess, or I go to the police with everything. He laughed, a bitter, hollow sound, and gestured to the cash-stuffed duffel on the table. You think I care about them? My family? They're nothing but a means to an end. His words were the confession I needed, but before I could react, he lunged, drawing his gun. Wing Chun teaches you to redirect, not resist, so I stepped aside, using his momentum to disarm him, my movements swift, precise. The gun clattered to the floor, and I pinned him, my knee on his chest, my camera still rolling. It's over, I said, but his grin chilled me. You think Lauren's innocent? She's been playing you, boy. Playing me? My mind spun, but I kept my focus, binding his wrists with zip ties, knowing every second was evidence. I had him pinned, ready to call the cops, but then I heard the click of a gun behind me. It was Lauren, her face pale, her hands trembling as she aimed at me. Let him go, Miles, she whispered, her voice breaking, but her eyes hard. Wing Chun teaches you to anticipate betrayal, but this was a strike I never saw coming. I turned slowly, facing Lauren, the woman I'd loved, now a stranger with a gun, and my Wing Chun training kicked in. Anticipate, adapt, survive. The cabin's dim light cast shadows across her face, but her eyes were cold, resolute, nothing like the woman who'd kissed me goodbye. Let him go, she repeated, her voice trembling, but her grip steady. Richard laughed from the floor, a cruel, triumphant sound. Told you, boy. She's my daughter, through and through. I kept my hands raised, my mind racing, searching for the blind spot, the weakness just as Wing Chun teaches. Why, Lauren? I asked, my voice calm, buying time. Why protect him? After everything. She swallowed, tears streaming down her face, but her words cut deeper than any bullet. I never loved you, Miles, she said. I married you for stability, for a life away from this mess. But I couldn't let him destroy us. Emily, Mom, Mark. He's my father. Her confession hit me like a Wing Chun chain punch, each word a blow to the life I thought we'd built. Stability? Not love. I've been a pawn, a shield, nothing more. Richard's grin widened, but I saw my opening. Her hands were shaking, her focus slipping. Wing Chun teaches you to strike when the opponent's guard is down. So, I moved fast, deflecting the gun upward as it fired, the bullet grazing my shoulder, hot and sharp. I disarmed her, pinning her to the wall, my heart breaking, but my resolve ironclad. Richard lunged, but I kicked him back, my Wing Chun precision keeping them both at bay. You're done, I said, my voice steady despite the pain, the betrayal. Lauren sobbed. You'll never be free of this, Miles, but I ignored her, grabbing my camera, the evidence intact. I called the police, my shoulder bleeding, my mind reeling, but my purpose clear. I looked into her eyes, searching for the woman I loved, but all I saw was a stranger, a liar, a betrayer. And then she pulled the trigger, but I was already moving, already winning, already transforming into the man her lies had forced me to become. I survived the gunshot, saved by Wing Chun's deflection and my refusal to trust blindly, but the scars, physical and emotional, would stay with me forever. The police arrived, sirens piercing the night, and I handed over the camera, the cash, the documents, watching as they arrested Richard and Lauren, their lies exposed in the harsh light of justice. Richard cursed, Lauren sobbed, but I felt nothing, just the cold clarity Wing Chun had taught me, the ability to see the fight through, no matter the cost. The weeks that followed were a blur of statements, lawyers, and revelations. Richard's fake death, his gambling debts, his blackmail, 20 years of crimes unraveled, each one uglier than the last. Lauren's role was smaller, but no less damning. She'd funneled our savings, lied to my face, and, worst of all, admitted she'd never loved me. The police found Victor, too, his burner phone tying him to the threats, his photos of me meant to intimidate, not expose. Diane, Emily, and Mark were questioned, their family shattered, but I felt no pity. Wing Chun teaches you to let go of what you can't control. I filed for divorce, sold a house, and moved to a new city, my shoulder healing, but my trust in others broken. Wing Chun became my anchor, its forms a way to rebuild, not just physically, but mentally. I'd been a fool, a pawn, but now I was a warrior, not a casualty. Lauren's final words, "You'll never be free," echoed, but I refused to let them define me. I'd won, not by revenge, but by truth, by exposing their lies to the world. But then, months later, a letter arrived, postmarked from the prison where Lauren was serving time for fraud and attempted assault. Her handwriting, once so familiar, now felt alien, hinting at one final secret she'd never revealed. I held it over the flame, watching it burn, choosing to move forward, not look back. Wing Chun teaches you to anticipate, but also to release, and I was done being their pawn, their victim, their fool. I was free, but the fight had changed me forever. Months later, I stood in my new apartment, the city skyline stretching before me, a fresh start carved from the ashes of betrayal. Wing Chun had saved me, not just in that cabin, but in the aftermath, its philosophy, adapt, overcome, let go, guiding me through the pain, the anger, the loss. I was different now, sharper, stronger, my trust in others tempered by clarity I'd never had before. I'd gone from a trusting husband to a calculating survivor, and I liked this version of me better, scars and all. I still practiced Wing Chun. Its forms a daily ritual, a reminder of the discipline that kept me alive, the focus that turned chaos into victory. My shoulder ached on cold days, a physical scar to match the emotional ones, but I welcomed it, a badge of survival, not defeat. I'd rebuilt my life, my career, even my hobbies, finding solace in the precision of code and the flow of martial arts. Two worlds where trust wasn't required, only skill. Lauren's letter, burned unread, was my final victory, a refusal to let her lies pull me back. Wing Chun teaches you to see the whole fight, not just the first strike, and I saw it now. Her betrayal, Richard's crimes, the family's complicity, they were battles I'd won, not by violence, but by truth, by strategy, by refusing to be their victim. I thought of Emily, the innocent caught in their web, and hoped she'd find her own freedom, but I couldn't save her, only myself. I used to think love was blind, a fairy tale of trust and loyalty, but now I knew it was a battlefield, a test of strength, of will. Wing Chun had taught me that, and more, how to fight, how to win, how to walk away. I was a warrior, not a casualty, and as I looked out at the city, I felt not just free, but alive, ready for whatever fight came next, knowing I'd never be blindsided again. Thank you for tuning into Tori's Story. We appreciate every single one of you. We'd love to know what part of the world are you watching from right now. Let us know in the comments.